Charlotte Bronte's Victorian novel Jane Eyre challenges many societal norms of the Victorian era. Throughout this story, the definition of what it means to be a male or female in a society is constantly questioned. The rule-abiding plain Jane Eyre discovers her self-worth, along with the realization that society cannot constrict her.
Jane is forced to find comfort within herself at a young age in order to withstand the hardships. Later we find that this isolation led Jane to be an independent woman, someone who would be considered modern. Meet the Reed family. She lives with her Aunt Reed along with her 3 cousins. The Reed family abuses her and neglects her.
Bronte's social commentary is strong throughout the novel, but is especially abundant in the part of the book when Jane begins to attend a charity school. The girls at the school are taught basic domestic skills and how to act like a lady. In the book, Jane describes times of when girls are being punished for their mistakes and impurities. It is far better to endure patiently a smart, which nobody feels but yourself, than to commit a hasty action whose evil consequences will extend to all connected with you. Page 66. It is clear that Bronte does not agree with the harsh treatment. Her ideas are often reflected through Jane's ideas and actions.
This quote is basically saying that it's best to endure the harsh punishments and criticism than to stand up for yourself, but Jane's actions are often a reflection of Bronte's views. This shows that Bronte believes that the girls should be allowed to be more outspoken. When Jane gets older, she finds a job as a governess at Thornfield, a large house owned by a mysterious Mr. Rochester. Jane is hired to take care of his ward, Adele. Over the course of Jane's working experience, she begins to have feelings for Mr. Rochester. She begins to think that he feels the same way about her, but she isn't sure. I'm sure we all know that feeling. We, as readers, can infer that Mr. Rochester feels the same way, but we are thrown off when Mr. Rochester brings the news that he's going to be married to a young, rich, beautiful woman by the name of Blanche Englehart.
Throughout the first half of the novel, Mr. Rochester is seen as a rather strange and peculiar man, which is okay because he's rich and that's all that truly matters. Right? Wrong. We later find that Mr. Rochester is doing these strange things, dressing up as a gypsy woman, showing affections for another woman while at the same time telling Jane his secrets, to find out how Jane truly felt about him. As mentioned previously before, it would be inappropriate for Mr. Rochester to walk up to Jane and tell her how he felt about her. Despite Mr. Rochester's unorthodox behavior, he respects Jane's boundaries.
One night, Jane feels that she can't suppress her love for Mr. Rochester any longer, so she tells him how she feels. In response to her, he asks her to marry him, and of course Jane says yes. So it's all like a single replacement in chemistry. You have magnesium, and then you also have copper sulfate. When you mix them together, you end up with copper and magnesium sulfate. In other words, Jane is the magnesium, and Mr. Rochester is the sulfate, and Blanche is the copper. At first, Blanche and Rochester are together, and then Jane is spectating. But later in the book, Jane and Mr. Rochester are together, and then Blanche is spectating.
The lines between each social class were very distinct. Jane is constantly going in and out of each social class throughout her life. When he is with the Reed family, she is here. When she goes to work as a governess, she is here. But we'll get to that later. While Jane travels between the classes, she remains a reserved, yet un-Victorian and independent woman. Many people married for economic benefit. When Jane and Mr. Rochester decide to marry for love, she worries that she will be looked down upon due to the fact that she is marrying someone who is completely out of her social class, and they may think there is something peculiar about their relationship. In fear of hatred and judgment, Jane responds with something that is out of character for her. She writes to her uncle asking for inheritance so that she'll get in a closer class to Mr. Rochester.
During the wedding ceremony, Jane learns something that is a deal breaker for the marriage. She leaves Thornfield and finds a place in the woods. There she finds 3 siblings living together. One of them is named St. John. Over the time, St. John and Jane become friends. Out of nowhere, St. John asks Jane to marry him. He would be able to provide her with a decent life without judgment, but they're not in love. Jane would much rather marry Mr. Rochester, but she knows something about him that makes it almost impossible for him to marry her. But they do love each other.
Sweet love of youth, forgive if I forget thee. While the world's tide is bearing me along, other desires and other hopes beset me. Hopes which obscure but cannot do thee wrong. Emily Bronte, Remembrance. To conclude, it was apparent that the Bronte sisters believed in marrying for love, rather than the social bearings that the Victorian era withholds.
Created using Powtoon.